All righty. I don't want to say that our lives have been leading up to Oklahoma. Even though before you really study musicals, you don't necessarily know that it's a special play. I mean, you know that it's a fun one and that they sing that song about Oklahoma in it, etc. But you don't know that it's that innovative just because so many plays have come after it and done similar things. So, we're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about the origins of the play itself. And we're going to talk about its reception a little bit, as well as some of the dance in there. So, Rogers had worked with Hart and Hammerstein had worked with Kern. They collaborated to make the musical a unique art form with Oklahoma. So, and the difference, I think, if we contrast it even to Anything Goes, which you've heard some songs from before. The story is told through the songs, not with, adjacent to, etc. the songs. It's not the same as, two people look like they're falling in love and they sing, I get a kick out of you or something like that. It's, you know, closer to the standards composition style, but than to an operatic style, but the songs have a point. The songs develop the characters. They introduce the characters. They complicate the relationships of the characters. And although you could showcase a voice in the songs, and you do hear this in some of them, especially characters like Curly, who starts singing "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning" before you even see him on stage. Content did not take a backseat to plot and character. In other words, some of the songs make literally no sense without the musical as context. Poor Judd is dead. Like, who's Judd? Nobody's going to sing about Judd being dead, unless it's like a country song that's really, really catchy and it's a ballad about Judd, but that's not this. So yeah, and then the contrast, I get a kick out of you, or some of these other, even something like Blow Gabriel Blow from Anything Goes is sort of just about an epiphany. I want to go to the promised land. That's, that doesn't require sitting down and seeing the musical to understand. So there was a musical on which Oklahoma was based. And it was called Green Grow the Lilacs, which sounds very pretty. And it was set in Oklahoma Territory in the early 20th century, and the songs were a lot of folk songs. So it actually sounds a bit like a country version of something like the Beggar's Opera or the Threepenny Opera. It did have a sad ending in contrast to other musicals. Basically, there's a conflict over Laurie, and she doesn't end up with either of the men. And, that contrasts to other musicals like all the various Love on a Boat musicals. Although Showboat had sadness in it, people got showiness from it. So they took a crack at it, Rogers and Hammerstein, and called it Away We Go, kind of like, I guess, to imply a sort of westward expansion vibe with the title. And one of the reviews noted a flaw, that's a little bit oddly typed there, sorry about that you couldn't see any girls for the first 35 minutes of the play. So the context was, where are all the dancing girls to look at? Which we'd seen and talked about with Ziegfeld. We'd seen it with all these other shows. In the case of Anything Goes, you would have girls in little tap dancing outfits dancing. In Showboat, I mean, it's a show on a boat, so there would be showgirls dancing. Someone's positive review said, oh, well, the roles are played straight, so actual acting, right? Which enhances the script angle. So respect for the fact that it was a more, well-written show than some of the other ones. However, there was another early review that said, no gags, no girls, no chance. And, if you expect all musicals to be comedy, to have dancing girls and to have like jokes, rather than a sense of humor kind of underlying them, then yeah, this is wrong. You're not going to want it. It's the funny stuff in Oklahoma isn't jokes, it punchlines. But I mean, there's a song called "I'm Just a Girl Who Can't Say No," and Ado Annie, she just gets all excited about these guys who get excited about her, and there's something kind of cute and amusing and oddly sex positive about it. So, there is a lot of joy in the show, but it's not the kind of jokes that these people wanted. Um, we are so used to seeing drama in musicals now that it's hard to remember that they were happy and escapist. I mean, think of something like Rent. Think of Phantom of the Opera. It's very rare to laugh at Phantom of the Opera, Les Miserables. I mean, even some of the funny stuff is sort of darkly funny. But today we have both. I mean, there's, humor and amusement today too. So what was different about it? To kind of sum up, humor came from character, not jokes anyone could tell. You wouldn't go back home and say, "Oh, remember the one that guy told?" No, you wouldn't say that. It doesn't really talk about Oklahoma until the last song. The book mentions this too. Like, in most musicals that would have been called Oklahoma, the first song would be, "Hey, we're in Oklahoma, Oklahoma." And the last song ends up being the one about it. It opens with Curly, who's a cowboy male lead, and cowboys were known for, enjoying singing, singing off stage, entering mid-song. So it opens with just like an empty stage. This is not what people expected. There were girls and they danced, but they were wearing kind of pioneer dresses. And they were cast because of how well they danced more than the hottest girls they could find. Agnes DeMille was the choreographer, and she needed skilled dancers for what she had them doing. So they're, as you can watch the film, the original film from the 50s, and you'll see that these are pretty but quirky and fun girls, not, like the glamorous showgirls. The songs intensified thought and speech. There's a blend between dialogue and singing. Like the song, "Don't act like you're too into me. People will say we're in love." This couple, Curly and Lori, who seem into each other, but kind of don't want to admit it to themselves or to each other. And, the flirtation is the kind where everybody else around them is like, "Oh, come on, you two, just get together." The songs help to develop that and also to bring the leads together. And there was also a dream ballet, and this ends up being somewhat popular for a few musicals for a period. And this was just pure dance as a synthesis of ballet and modern dance. I'd also like to ask you to think why it's called Oklahoma ! And not just Oklahoma as the state. So think about that one. We'll talk about DeMille just a little bit, especially since some of the main choreographers we're going to be talking about. DeMille worked with Jerome Robbins. Jerome Robbins worked with Bob Fosse. Those are sort of the three biggest choreographers we'll be talking about in this class. Cecil B. DeMille, the director, was one of her relatives. She came from a famous Hollywood family. She wanted to be a dancer, but didn't have the right body for ballet, where your legs turn out a particular way. People actually body shamed her when she was coming up, and she became one of the most famous choreographers in history. So, haha, take that. There weren't many other options besides be a ballerina. And, she said, no, we got to find something else. So she kind of just goes with modern dance and helps develop it. She, used nepotism, helping family with movies, becomes a choreographer, writes dances, designs them. And so there's the grace of ballet with kind of modern dance and modern movement in theater and dance. So when you watch numbers like Many a New Day from Oklahoma, you'll see sort of what DeMille's art is and does. And then when you see the Dream Ballet from Oklahoma, you'll see kind of how she moves over to the ballet side of things too. Um, we've seen so much of her influence on dance that it's kind of hard to comprehend the innovation today. But if you look at an actual ballet scene or two, you'll see why DeMille differs. So this is a, kind of a very short tour. Um, and this is, you don't have to watch all of this, but it's that Miss Mojo site that had the Fred Astaire series. This is a hardest dance moves compilation, and most of them are from either breakdancing or ballet. Some of the ballet, there are some ballet moves that are harder than these, and you can go into the comments and all the ballerinas are like, oh, well, I think this is harder. So, take it with a grain of salt. But seeing the difficulty of what the body does and how to train it to do that and what kinds of balance and movement you need, it's really helpful. And then what you might want to do next is to watch Mikhail Baryshnikov's solo in Don Quixote, which is one of my favorite dance solos of all time. It looks unbelievably graceful and effortless, and the height that he gets and the angles that he gets, while at the same time acting as a character. It's just perfect. It's wonderful. So then when you kind of looked at some of these and familiarized yourself, you can kind of watch that Dream Ballet in Oklahoma, and see what DeMille is kind of creating as a narrative with it. And right before that, in the show, I mean, you could also switch these and watch in a different order. But I kind of purposefully placed our, DeMille doing DeMille, at the end here, where Many a New Day is dance. It's inspired by ballet, but it's directly tied to the show itself, and it's not, a ballet. So, and it has more ease to it with energy and joy, including, one of the jokes in the show is that one of the dancers isn't following along in the right way. And it's very cute and it's funny, but you can see why people might not have understood that. So the impact of Oklahoma. This is actually from that production of The Music Man, with Hugh Jackman and Sutton Foster. So Oklahoma premieres during World War II. It was uniquely American, and people loved that about it. It was far more popular than people thought it would be, even though some of the early reviewers didn't really get it. It was also kind of about America, which I think helped. There's the frontier, there's differing masculinities, even a song called The Farmer and the Cowboy Should Be Friends. Futurity sort of encroaching upon small town life. There's a song about everything's up to date in Kansas City. And this kind of setting ends up being everywhere. That sort of turn of the 20th century style. It's in The Music Man, it's in Hello Dolly. If you go to Main Street USA at Disney, all that kind of music there. Carousel eventually ends up being like this, which we'll talk about next. It's a nostalgia about specifically pre-World War I America that people can't relinquish. However, to kind of conclude, we know that there are other stories of Oklahoma waiting to be told. This is also a settler fantasy. And what we call the frontier, we meaning the US, not we, it might not be everybody that's that we. This was indigenous people's home. So think about the possibility of new versions of this story that could be written today to make this kind of art vibrant and new, telling the stories of displaced populations, indigenous Oklahomans, and rethinking choreography and music. So think about that as well. Thank you.